Hello, this is Malorian, and what this video here is going to be is just pretty much my final thoughts of the Alberta GT. So everything from, how I placed, what were the finalists, how I thought about my list, and even the army, and then really coming down to the tournament as well, the way it was run, and just my thoughts on that, and other people's thoughts on it as well. So I guess the first thing to cover is that what was I going for? Well, going into this, I was actually hoping to do very well. I normally, my criteria for doing well in the tournament is winning more than I lose. That's my general thing I go for. But in this tournament here, I was actually aiming for 5 wins. So, ahead of that curve. And I actually came pretty close. I ended up with 4 wins, 1 tie, and a 1 loss. And that's fairly solid, but it was a little bit short of what I was looking for, but I was still pretty happy with that. In the end, what I actually ended up with was being third best general. So I actually got pretty high, a lot higher than I thought I would, especially given some of the low numbers I got. But I guess that's one of the things with a 20-nil system where it's not really just how you did from one game to the next. It's really how you did compared to everybody else. And really the way that some of this works, I mean, I guess I'll be talking about this later, but yeah, I was just really happy to still win third best general because, to be completely honest, I was not happy with my performance. I'm really, I mean, right away I went and I threw it on Facebook. Hey guys, guess what? I'm third best general in Alberta, and I was so happy about it. But overall, I wasn't too happy with the way I actually gamed this tournament. I mean, there's that last game. It was like, yeah, I got this big crushing victory. But there's really just those 2 games. The one game against the Lizardmen and the game against the High Elves, Paul Ting and Kieran Dunleavy, where I just feel like an idiot looking back on those games because of the massive tactical blunders and also in the one game, the cheating. So let's get into that first, and then I'll talk about the actual winners and all that fun stuff. But I guess the first one is the Lizardman game. And really looking at that one there, I mean, that's a dream scenario where the slan is stuck off on one side, everything else is on the other. I mean, good luck to you, Heaven's Wizard. Best you can do is try and go for some comments or something, and I'm just going to go and clean up the unsupported army. And guess what? I just totally flopped because really between the 2 choices, there should only be one choice because there's no chance of taking out Temple Guard and Slan in a building when they can always jump out the other side if everything's looking bad. And so it should have been so obvious to go off to the one side. But not only did I make wrong decisions, but I kept on flip-flopping. And that's something I'm just not really known for. I'm really good for coming up with a battle plan and seeing it to the end and finding a way to make it work. And in that game, it was just horrendous. Now, keep in mind, this is at the height of my sickness in this tournament, where I was getting the cold fevers and all that stuff too. But even then, know what? I can't just use the sick card and get out of this one, get out of jail free thing. I'm really disappointed with how I did in that game. The other one too is the one against Kieran Dunleavy. This one's a little bit of a mix because, first of all, I'm disappointed that as a dwarf player that I did not think of how to make my castle. If I was just an Orc and Goblin player and hey, I just rush across and I kill things or whatever, that'd be one excuse. But I'm a dwarf player. I know how to run my castle, and I should know that if I have only one unit, great. That's that one wall, and then the other unit comes in to close the wall on the other side. I do not make one wall of the castle and then hope to God I'll shoot down the Phoenix from getting in the other side. Then when I came in, I had this cunning plan that I'll come in from the flank and do all these great things. First of all, that's actually cheating because I was so looking forward to like, okay, I can turn this around by coming over here and blah blah blah. But you know what? You can't come on from the shortboard edge. It has to be the longboard edge. Now Kieran didn't catch it. I didn't catch it till somebody actually posted on the battle report. But now I mean, I'm actually very glad that that's my 0-20 loss because really if I had earned 1 point in that game it would not be justified even though I got my ass kicked. The fact that I got 0 points at least says, hey, if I cheated, it got me nothing. But then again, also talking about that game there, as a high elf player who runs, the whole flying circus thing, I know that I'm looking for an army to fragment and break apart so I can pick whatever little area I want and focus on it. And that the the way to battle this flying circus is to actually have a solid battle line. So everything together, I mean, that was just a dumb game. And oddly enough, if I just would have followed the rules and remembered the rules, I would have corrected my problem automatically. So really feeling dumb about that game. And it's just one of these things where, if I'm an outsider looking in at those two games, like, really? This guy got to the GT final? So disappointed in my playing, but overall, it was a fun experience, especially the second day. The first day, it was hard to have fun when you're sick and puking and all this stuff. But hey, I fought my way through it. And at the end of the day, hey, if I would have left after that first or second game, I would have missed out on everything I had on the second day, all the fun I had. And hey, like being crowned second or third best general in Alberta. So that's really fantastic. As for who actually won all the other things, best presentation went to Paul Ting, so that was the amazing Lizardman army. And also people were commenting on the Ogre army. Well, that Ogre army is also Paul's. So, that's all his handiwork. Very, very awesome job at every aspect of the hobby, really. I mean, you look at these things, he just takes an army and he just puts his whole heart and soul into it. So very well deserved to him. Uh, Best general went actually to a Warriors of Chaos player. He was running with a big troll horde with Throg and actually big blocks of warriors. And something I want to talk about here is actually Anthony from the Sustainable Center recently made a video talking about how warriors are kind of garbage. But one of the things that I mean, it really depends on what your comp system is, the meta, blah, blah, for what units are good. But really, the reason why this player took this here is because of us actually using the rulebook scenarios. Normally, he'll run a big monster match, and he'll have the Skull Crushers, the Demon Prince, whatever, right? Just lots of monsters, go and crush your face. But because of the Blood and Glory and because of the Watchtower, that's why he went with this other list. So I talked to him briefly about it. He said that he was not totally sold on the Warriors, that they did okay type thing. But the main thing was just the idea that, this actually won Best General. Having this list here with Throg and the Trolls, which are clearly one of the strongest choices in the book. But it's just that, what do you go with that next, right? I mean, you can go with Skull Crushers. They're awesome, but they can be redirected, right? Or you can go with the Demon Prince, or you can go with the chimeras. But what happens if you lose that one game and you get cannoned off? And it's also this thing here where, especially in a 20-0 system, you can't give up victory points. And I guess I might as well talk about this here now, where, if you go with this Demon Prince or you go with the monsters, well, you can say that, okay, if I lose my whatever monster in this game, it's not that big of a deal. I can lose my Demon Prince and still win with the other aspects in my army. However, I'm now giving up so many points that the best type of victory I can get is, let's say, I don't know, throwing numbers out there, a 14-6 rather than getting the 20-0 crushing victory. Whereas if you go with something that's not going to be giving up victory points and going to be crushing the opponent, that's what you need to get this. So I guess something else to talk about here at this point is, what did I think about this whole 20-0 system, and what did other people think about it too? And really, it was going to be very, I don't know, kind of a pioneering for this tournament because no other tournaments around here use the 20-0 system. I mean, I guess maybe there might have been the odd one that I don't know about. I only go to I go to a lot of them, but mainly here in Edmonton and the bigger ones in Calgary. But all of them are on these different systems where you go for the massacre or the minor. There's set points for each. Some of them are on straight victory points, but the whole 20-0 system is rather sparse and rare here. So putting in this, I was really wondering how I was going to do, but really asking around and my own experiences is I really liked it. I was kind of worried that it was really going to force the armies to be the really aggressive ones and blah, blah, blah. But you know what? It really helped change the way the game was played, having to be more tactical and people having to actually think like, okay, I might as well not give up because it's just going to be a massacre loss either way. I can fight and try and make it so it's a 218 or whatever it is, just to try and get those last few points in there, right? To try and mitigate the loss. So I really love seeing that. One of the things that I think was a little bit of a mistake of the whole system, though, and that other people mentioned on too, is that this really should have been known beforehand. I mean, I was lucky that I was part of the committee where I knew it was going to be 20-0, and I tried kind of like leaking it out by having it on my intro video, but most people didn't know this going in. And that's really important because, I mean, I talked to some people and they said, well, the problem was with the army I took, it wasn't really designed to try and get these large differences, right? It's all about trying to pick away and get the win. And because they didn't know how this was going to be based off, and they thought it was going to be like the others, that was going to be the right idea. But because of how it was here, it didn't work out. So definitely no problem with the 20-0 system. They just really have to go and release that information to everyone sooner so that they know how to build their army. I guess now the next thing to talk about is who won best overall. Who is the champion of Alberta? And it turns out to be a fellow YouTube channel and I guess semi-star, but you know, it's Matthew Reason. I'm trying to think of what way to build this up, but it's Matthew Reason with his vampire accounts. He went back to his classic army. Hopefully, you guys will be seeing his battle report soon. But with the double Terrorgeist and all that fun stuff, big huge block of the um, Grave Guard, no vampire, just Master Necromancer back and safe and all these things. Some ethereal in there too, and you know what? Just very well done for him. I mean, one of the things you can say is like, oh, well, he dodged you, Mallory. Hey, I mean, you beat him in that last game. You could have beat him again. Well, he went out there and he beat the top players, right? It's not like he went through and lucked out and played the nobodies or something like that and got the big scores. I mean, going through there, he played the guy that was best general, right? He had to go through all this stuff. He had to play Paul Ting, another very strong player. I mean, all the way through, he had to play tough opponents. So, I mean, no way did he dodge his way up to the top. I mean, if anything, it's my fault for dropping the ball. I mean, I'm sure if I would have screwed up those two middle games, hey, maybe I could have faced Matthew Reason in the last couple of games, and who knows how that one would have went. But either way, I mean, a big congratulations to Matthew Reason. I'm going to be doing actually a couple of videos later on him. First of all, I have my whole demon thing with the minds being switched, so that should be a ton of fun. And also, I'm going to be doing a special video talking about the makings of a champion, because I think I really want to go and kind of describe that, what does he do that leads him to winning? It's not going to be a stupid thing, just like, oh yeah, double Terrorgeist, blah, blah, blah. Just really delving into it, because there is really a very strong set of skills that he uses that I want to kind of cover in an orc tactical team. But that's going to be coming up in the next week here. Once again, a big congratulations to, all the winners and all the people that even made it out to the GT. It really is a big thing where, it's not like just some tournament where, oh, okay, I just sign up and I'll go. Like, this is the gathering of the people that went to everyone during all the tournament circuits. You had to earn the points, you had to earn your tickets, and so this is really was a fantastic big event, and it was really good to see everyone there. I guess something to talk about that though is that there was a big difference between the fantasy and the 40K side, because I mean, especially talking to my brother and seeing who was there, the fantasy side was the who's who, right? Everyone, all the top, let's say 6 players, whatever, they were all there, and it was all very competitive, just like you would expect it to be. The fantasy side, you still had that, but there's a couple of key people missing. Just 2 in particular. I mean, I don't want to be saying any names or stuff here, but I really was amazed not to see them there, and it really was just because of the timing and stuff like that. And so that was really too bad to have that missing, but really I think the learnings from that there is just the whole idea where we had two-day tournaments really close to each other, so we really have to watch that spacing. Plus, it's a thing too where we have to get the date out for these tournaments a lot earlier so that they can plan for the GT, especially for the people that know that, hey, I'm one of the very competitive players, I need to be having this in my calendar. We need to have that out early. Now, again, I know from being on the inside, the reason why this happened is because we really tried to get this done here in Edmonton, and we dropped the ball. Just plain out simple, we dropped the ball, and so the Calgary guys had to quickly throw this together, and that's why we didn't get the dates out and stuff out sooner. So that's the reason there, but just something that we have to really look out for the following years, because it's all about improvement and all that fun stuff. I guess the next thing to talk about is then my list and all that fun stuff. And you know what? I'm just going to jump straight to it, and I'm pretty sure I took the best list I could. I mean, like I said, I knew it was going to be a 20 nail system going in. It had to be something that was going to go and table opponents and at the same time not give up victory points. And really, my list was pretty maxed out. I mean, I could do some further silly things and maybe like I'll take a horde of whatever, like make it even bigger, right? Instead of just taking, there's silly things you can do, but I think without getting super silly, my list was as competitive as I could have made it. And really, if I had the chance of now like going back in time and changing my list, I wouldn't do it. I'm happy with all the choices I took, and I know normally I go unit by unit, but really everything I'm happy with all those choices. I mean, maybe I'd like to do things like, oh, I could drop the fanatic, but you know what? My core is already at the 25%, so I can't really drop anything. So I mean, I guess I could have taken that fanatic and turned it into something like 8 more night goblins. But in the end, I liked having that fanatic there. It really helped me with things like when I had to clear out those high elf little nobles that came out to block me, things like that. I mean, it was just nice to have that little extra surprise back in my bunker. Um, of course, there's the whole idea of how did the trolls really do and how the black works. Well, unfortunately, some of these were some really bad games on my part, so it's not a really good representation. But clearly, there's a thing I saw too that there is a lot of flaming banners out there. I mean, people know that not really so much for orcs and goblins anymore. I mean, I guess I'm a big part of the meta where people have to be prepared for it, especially seeing guys like Matt Reeson, where even though he didn't bring it here, but now he has a horde of crypt horrors that he can always break out. But now, I mean, you also have the Warriors of Chaos, who are the real new boogeymen that you have to be really worried for with the whole, we got the trolls with Throg, right? The serious trolls, and we also have the chimeras going around and all that fun stuff. So lots of flaming stuff around, also in shooting, so it can be done by shooting. But even with that all put together, I still think the trolls are a very solid choice to take because especially if you can mitigate those matchups and see with things like, say, take my Tomb King battle as an example, where I know the Flaming Banner is there, so I'm going to go and I'm going to not match up my trolls against the chariots, right? Stuff like that. They are just so strong of a choice. I still think that in an event like this where you have the points, that 630 and 18 trolls, very well spent points there. So that's pretty much all I want to cover for my list. Even for the army, I think orcs and goblins were the right one to take. I mean, I could have gone with the high elves or something like that, but I really think that overall, unless I had the opportunity to get more trolls in and go with like a triple troll horde and demon prince and blah blah blah, this is really the best thing I could have done. And yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything else to say on that. Next thing I can say some things on the event. Let's start with the missions. I think it was really good going with the core book missions. And one of the things I made sure to do during all the breaks is talking to the other players. Because, I mean, as a tournament organizer and kind of as a representative of the circuit and all these things, I really want to find out what people's opinions were so that we know what to do and what to improve. And for you guys watching, if you're also a tournament organizer or just wondering, what is Alberta meta like? This is pretty much how it came across, where people are really happy that we were going back to the main rule book scenarios. I didn't hear any complaints about it being 6 games. It seemed like it was all right, 3 games a day. The whole idea of going with the rulebook scenarios, people really liked. The only thing they didn't like was the variance on it. And I heard a lot that they'd like to keep it exactly the same. The biggest one in particular was the dawn attack, where, I mean, normally the whole idea is it'll break up your formation and all these things. And you hear the horror stories where, like, everything was on one flank and my general's on the other side. But really, these instances are extremely rare. However, if you change it so on a 1, the opponent gets the pick, well, that changes it. And also, it's a lot more common. And especially, I mean, whatever you roll a 1 for, you know is going to be screwed. So whereas it's supposed to be a scenario that just kind of like, you have this set formation, well, it's going to be scattered slightly. Now it's like, well, anything you roll a 1 for is going to be completely screwed. So I think that's something that we really have to look at for next year and say, you know what, it just has to be base rules for the actual scenarios. Probably the only one that was the one that people weren't like that so much, or at least it was a split decision on, was the Watchtower. Now, I have my own thoughts on Watchtower, but just talking to other people, it seemed the general thing there was that they were pretty meh to the change. Like they didn't think it was overly good, didn't think it was overly bad. If anything, they liked it that nothing could go into the tower first turn. The whole thing where only 25 models could go into it. Well, that's a plus and a minus because on one part you can have it so like okay, 100 night goblins can't go into it right away and hold the whole thing. On the other side, well, what happens when 25 Warriors of Chaos with the Mark of Nurgle go inside? So that whole part, they'll have to see. The other part of it too was the way it gave points because normally it's a thing where if you have it, you win. But what they did here is gave points if you had it for the whole turn. Now, again, people were split on whether they would rather you just win or whether there should be points. But the one thing that there was a consensus around from what I mainly heard was a whole idea that it should be based off per player turn and not per game turn. Because you had these things where, okay, well, I could push you out, but at this point it's not worth it because I wasn't in there the whole game turn because I'm the second player. So you get all these silly things like that. So really, that's only one where, I mean, I have my own preferences, but for the most people, I guess the whole thing is just breaking it by turn and blah, blah, blah. Um, I know that there was also a new thing here as well, where we were deploying the terrain. And personally, I love this. And with all the people I talk to, they also love this. And it's just a thing where also as a tournament organizer, I mean, first of all, as a player, it really is a big part of the tactical game that's missing from tournaments. The whole, this is the terrain you have, trying to mitigate it, trying to get the most out of it. There's a lot of deep tactics that can come from placing terrain that's missed from tournaments, just having it set. And also can really bias the way that the play is going. Now, I know as a tournament organizer too, now seeing that people love this, I'm really interested in doing this in my tournament too, because I know that whenever I'm setting up terrain, first of all, it takes a long time because you have to get it out there, you have to place it. And it's not like I can just throw terrain around. You really have to keep your missions in mind because let's say if you are going to have Watchtower, all right, well, everyone has to have a building in the center. Or, if you have to be ready for meeting engagement, you have to be setting up the terrain so it's ready to be played one way, maybe with Battle for the Pass the other way, and then with meeting engagement diagonally as well. And if you're having any special mission, you have to be planning around that too. Well, it's so easy if all you can do is like, okay, well, here's a train for this table. Bam, done. And so from all aspects, this was a great idea, and I was glad to see that it worked out so well. The only thing that there was the negative on was that the way it played out is that you would roll for sides, then you'd roll and take turns placing terrain. You had to place terrain on your half of the sides. You can't do something like put, a haunted mansion on their side, right in the middle or something. But the big thing that people didn't really like is the idea that you knew which was your side, so that you could give yourself the perfect terrain. What they'd rather see is that you're still having that mitigation of where you're placing the terrain. You don't know if you're going to have that side or not, so that sure, you might want to have, let's say, that wizard's tower or something like that, but hey, if you put in the right middle there, you might be giving it to your opponent, so you're going to be putting it somewhere where, let's say, if you're an aggressive wizard, it's somewhere more the middle type thing, right? So they really want to see it so that you place the terrain, then roll for sides, just like it is in the book. So there's that there. The other thing, too, that would actually even make the system easier is they had a chart in the player pack that actually broke down to like, okay, if you get a woods or a building, you roll this dice, and this is what it is. And I guess for buildings that makes sense because there is no chart for it, but especially for something like a forest, there already is a chart inside the book, so why make a second chart? Because, I mean, there's a lot of different things then that we never saw because it wasn't one of the three options. The things with the buildings, too, I heard some complaints that, the amount of, because it could only be a regular building, a haunted mansion, or the Dwarven Brewhouse. And it's like, well, there's other buildings too, right? Why don't they just expand the chart and have more options so you're not having a stubborn giving building in almost all your games, right? So that's something that also I see, and that's really easy to do, right? Pretty much you're just taking anything that already has a chart, just take it out, and then for the things like buildings, expand them to be covering all the rest. So there you have that there. Very simple stuff. But I mean, the big thing I guess I want to say about the tournament overall is it went over very well. The spot we were at, very nice. We had lots of room. I wasn't a too big of a fan of this university because I guess I could talk about because only the people that are there will know what I'm talking about. But man, it was like a freaking maze with like this jagged uh, concrete all over the place. It wasn't very inviting. But I mean, once you got inside the hall was very nice. The tournament was very well run. They had, a mic so that they could be actually being hear. You could hear what they're saying without yelling. They had a projector up there so they could be posting the matches. And I guess for some people in other areas, this might be the norm, but around here, that isn't the norm, right? Normally, when it's time for matches, they're like, okay, everybody come over here so I can yell the matches. And, as you say them, people are yelling, so you can't really hear what the next one was. And hey, what was my opponent? What table? But when you can just look up and see what your matchup is and what your table is, well, it makes it so much easier and so much straightforward. So very well run. Definitely, I mean, just some small changes for the next year. And I mean, I'm really excited to see how it's going to be now that, I mean, this is the first year for it, right? So it's only going to get better from here. And who knows? I mean, by the time we get to the next one, will it'll still be orcs or goblins or not. But overall, just really great stuff. One of the things I know I can say leaving this tournament now is I'm ready to kind of relax again. Kind of ramping up to this tournament, I was getting a lot more competitive, just wanting to crush everybody's face. And now it's like, you know what? I really want to do something different for the next tournaments. First of all, I know I want to try do some Throg lists just because people want to see more troll battles. That might even be part of the tournament. I might just do that for some other games. By the way, I have a deal and I got like 11 more trolls coming in, so we'll be going with triple troll horde pretty quick here. But I'm also really keen with an idea where I'd actually have my daughter make my army list, where I'd say, hey, these are all the things I have. What unit should I take? All right, this one here, how many models? And all these things. Like just, I'll probably have like the dumbest, wackiest list, but it'll just be a lot of fun. But anyway, look forward to all this. Thanks for watching all the battle reports. If you have any comments on my list, any of the games, the way the tournament was run, really anything, just go down, post it below. I'll answer your questions. And yeah, we'll catch you later. Bye.